AliCamp 2024. Donna Spencer, a rules-based approach to designing accessible dark and light mode. AliCamp 2024 is brought to you by our gold sponsors Intopia and ANZ, silver sponsor Canva, and Auslan sponsor SignHow.
Why doesn't that work? There we go. Okay, got it. So the only thing that Sarah didn't just say in my intro that is super important for today is that I am not very good at visual design, and I never thought that I would ever get on stage and do a talk about visual design. But one of the things that I have to do, at MakerX we work with startups and ventures, and I'm often, almost always a designer of one on a project. So I have to do all the things. And that means I do have to work out of my preference and do not visual design. And you might think, hang on, how does a designer not do visuals? Well, I can do analysis and strategy and all the really good UX things and figure out like really complex interactions and figure out how complex systems work. I just don't like making them look nice. I think it's like literally the most boring thing that I ever have to do. So what I wanted to do was figure out a way to do this better. A partial trigger for this is that one of the things that we do is use different front-end frameworks for building applications, and increasingly the front-end frameworks just like support light and dark automatically, and the developers would be saying to me, can you give me the dark mode palette as well? And I'm like, no. So I had to learn how to do that. The difficulty is that a palette that you use in one mode will not work in the other mode. For colour contrast purposes, and also like literally just for being able to see it purposes. Often colours will look different on different backgrounds, so you need to also cater for the fact that a colour that looks like a brand colour on a white, light or dark will look different, and I need to design for those things. And a particularly hard thing I found is that there's not like good inspiration. When I put this talk in, I'm like, maybe this is just something that everybody knows and there's no way, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it can't just be me because I can't find inspiration for how to design for it. I can't find good articles on it, so I don't think it's just me. And I think that hopefully the conference committee are like, there's probably something there that people don't know. Some applications resolve this by using like a completely neutral palette, and some will just use black and white with highlights. And that's not something that I can do when I'm working with a client. I can't say, hey, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm just going to design your thing in black and white and we'll maybe have a pop of colour. That's not going to happen. A lot of apps also just use one mode, of course, as well. I was looking for inspiration and it is genuinely hard to find sites that work super well in dark and light. Material Design, the website does it actually really well. They've got really good navigation there. It's not just black and white, there's colour throughout. And then I found this Get Started page where in light mode, they've used this really vibrant, exciting yellow that's like really communicates something to you. And in dark mode, because yellow is really hard to work with, in dark mode it just turns into like a browny green sludge. And I thought they could have probably done something better with that. So this is a super practical talk. I'm going to do a step-by-step, of course, as well. That's always what I do. As I said before, we're always going to need two palettes. I'm going to work through two examples today that come from, one is whatever this hand is, left-hand side, is our work brand palette, and the right-hand side was a client palette that I worked with recently. So I'm just going to show you how I work with both of these. So the first step is to take these brand colours and create a colour scale of them. which is where I need to go a little bit technical around like colour theory right now, because the way most people develop a colour scale is they start with a brand colour, they add white to lighten it, and they add black, grey, dark to darken it. And if you look at like scale generators in something like Figma, that's how they will usually generate a scale. The problem with doing that is that depending on the hue that you start with, when you develop your light and dark, I've deliberately like stacked this up on the slide purposefully. You can see that I have a yellow as an example. A yellow, in comparison to other colours at the same part of the scale, is always going to be visually brighter. Like if I chose a yellow from this part of the palette and put it into an interface, it is going to always jump out at you. So you can't get a good, consistently contrast palette just by adding dark and light. This will make a little more sense when I show you the alternative. Instead of using white and black, I use a scale called LCH. And LCH is designed to represent colours in a way that's more similar to how we see them with our eyes. And this is called, I'm just reading this off my slides, perceptual uniformity. So in this example, I took the same two brand palettes and used an LCH scale to come up with the darks and lights. And again, apologies for saying, and now you can see, I'm very aware that I'm doing a very visual talk today. If you look down a column of the palette here, the colour at each level of dark and light is perceptually uniform. It won't jump out at you. The numbers that I put on the colours are the colour contrast against black. When I showed you the white, the one that added black and white, the yellow is a 17.2, so very, very high contrast. In this one, the yellow is closer, is a 13. So this palette will give you something that is much more easy to use and easy to apply, where you don't have to, where you can like just use it consistently. Another thing that can happen in using this particular scale is sometimes when the mathematics do, make colours out of numbers. Particularly, I've noticed this in like bluey purples. Towards the dark end of the scale, a purpley mauvey kind of colour can end up quite blue, which means it doesn't look like a brand colour anymore. So I will always do this by eye as well and say to myself, does this still look like a brand colour across the scale? And in this case, I replaced a what had gone quite blue with something. I just inched it up and grabbed a bit more red in the tool. So I kept the same contrast level, but made it like slightly purpler, so it fit the brand better. And another thing that I might do when I'm choosing, like when I'm like figuring out my palette, is I will tweak things so I can hit the magic number of 4.5 to 1. I know that literally doesn't make it more accessible, but it's going to make it past the tool, and nobody's going to say, Donna, your thing's got problems. And when we push stuff through, like into the Android store, we're not going to fail technically. So I will, if something's right on the border, I'll tweak it slightly just so it passes a numerical scale. In this case, the reason you can't necessarily even see anything in some of these blocks is they were so close that changing the colour numerically didn't actually change how you perceive it, except a pink, the third pink down there. When I changed it to pass numerically, it actually changed the visual look of the colour, so I didn't do that. I do know that that's not like really the most important bit, but I do want to, I need to pass automated tests. It's just a part of it. We need to add semantic colours and neutrals. I just have a set of cool and warm semantic colours, so they'll go with whichever palette I need to work with. And I'm still kind of figuring out how I do neutrals consistently, but usually I'll use like the dark background colour and the light background colour and grade between them. The hard work is actually now done. This making of the scales is the tricky bit. The next part is then just actually about applying it to an interface. So what I now do is I've got my palette and I start at the middle of the palette and I move outwards and I am just completely consistent. The thing I forgot to say at the beginning is the reason I want to do this is because I don't like having to like randomly choose colours and randomly make decisions. I want a system, I want an approach, I want to have just logic and rules so that I can apply the logic and rules to myself so that this boring job is less tedious. So I'm going to choose a main colour, a main column on the light side. I'm going to choose a main column on the dark side. That might be my main colour. I'm going to go out one potentially if I need a hover state or a selected state if I'm doing designing for desktop. I might go out another column to get colours for things that you really do want to highlight and pop. I also, in this, just for the ease of the talk and slides, I only used like a 10-point scale. You can easily use a much larger scale to give yourself more options for choosing, your main colours, your highlights. But the main thing is I just run down those columns. So when I choose like a primary, a secondary, and potentially a tertiary colour, I know that I can apply these to an interface and they're going to work well and none of them are going to be like in my face yelling at me. So I did just a couple of examples. I grabbed a template from Figma that had dogs in it. It's like, that's cute. I can stare at dogs for a couple of hours while I do this incredibly boring thing of applying colours to an interface. So the example on the right is the one I grabbed. There are colours in here that do not pass contrast. It's really funny. I was looking at all these templates and so many designers pick up a template from Figma, like the Figma Marketplace, and run with it. So few of them use blacks and greys that actually are readable, and so many of them do things like, a light button colour with white on it that also isn't readable. So anyway, I grabbed this cute dog app and applied. I just used my rules. I said, in this one, pink is the primary colour, green is the secondary colour. I'm going to go through and apply it in all the places, and I'm going to fix the blacks and greys as well off my scale. So I had that, I just did 2 pages of this, and it just worked. Like, it just works. These two look like they belong to the same brand family, but all the colours are actually readable. I used a background colour for some icons that I don't love. I would probably tweak that because I could probably go do some, I don't know, I would do something, but that one didn't work super well, where it worked fine in the light mode. And here it is again with the second palette. Again, this looks like, both versions feel like the brand, though again, the colours are actually readable. The dogs are cute. So Adrian said, Adrian said, Donna will say something technical. I'm like, I didn't say anything technical. I better put it, oh, no. Then I thought, oh, I have a good idea. I know what I can do technical. I said at the beginning that, like a lot of the front-end frameworks just have light and dark mode in them. Something that I need to do as a designer and that other designers also need is to understand how your front-end framework uses colour, so that you know which things you need to choose. This is an example from Ionic, which is a framework we often use because it pushes applications to iOS and Android from one code base. It needs a primary colour, a secondary colour, a tertiary colour, the semantic colours, some dark mediums and lights. And then for each of those, it needs a base light, a base dark, the contrasting colour, sorry, not a base light and a base dark, a base, a shade and a tint is what I meant, and the contrasting colour. And that's actually quite a lot to choose, but if you've done this process and you've like made your things and you've chosen your palette from the consistent colours, you can plug it in, and the developers will like just plug it into the theme file, and automatically a whole lot of stuff, like the components, just work. I grabbed an example from Material UI as well, which does. I think that they've changed some things recently, because I don't think they used to have a light and a dark version of the main colours, though I could be wrong with that. Yeah, again, like there's a lot that you have to choose, but if you've done a process, you've chosen your colours, you plug them into the theme, and ta-da. But the reason the designers need to understand this is that understanding how the theme works means you can be designing towards it, which means your developers love you a lot more because you've been logical and you've thought about how components work. So this is an example that I did do for a client app. And in this example for Ionic, I needed 40 individual colours. Usually there'll be 48, but I had a green, so I used the green in the brand colour and the success colour. So a summary, start with your brand colours, create the scale using LCH and tweak it up if necessary, create the semantic colours in the same way, create the neutrals as a scale between your light background and your dark background. And then, as I said, start from that middle of the palette and choose pairs evenly as you move out for your different components. And I haven't done this, but I feel like this approach might actually be quite good for alternate palettes like high contrast and colourblind friendly variants. I just haven't worked on it, so I can't say that it does work, but I feel like it might, because it's so damn logical. This is where you can find me. I have a special cat QR code for Michelle. I already had it in my slides. We build a product that turns AI-generated art into cute QR codes. They're not always cute, but that one with the cats inside it is the bomb. That's where you can find me. Thank you very much. I think we're going to do questions somewhere if you need to dig in.
Ali Camp 2024.